Greetings, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the People's Global News Network. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Thank you for tuning in to QX Global News Network, the People's News Network. Today, we're bringing forth to you the story of a gentleman, a hard-working father, a hard-working family man, a man who has never ever had any run-ins with the law, never had any bad marks on his record at his job. He has been a stellar employee, an immigrant to America who did everything the right way to live and work in this nation, only to have his life turned upside down by the notorious company DISA Global Solutions. When you look up the history of DISA Global Solutions destroying families, you will be shocked that all across America in different states, this drug testing company that is the number one drug testing facility for major oil industry work, all type of major corporate work, they test and drug test everybody for state institutions, etc. This company is notorious for people coming back with false positive drug tests. And the people will go back to DISA a day or two later and take the same test, and then DISA will give them negative results, but yet will not recognize the mistake. And this has destroyed people's livelihoods, destroyed people's families. Some men and women have divorced because of what DISA did to their families. I have Brother Chike here, and I want him to tell you his story, this stellar career without spot or blemish, and let him tell the world what DISA did to him.
I am okay, Chike Iwawu. Until the 15th of April, I was a corporate safety manager, EHS safety manager for the company I worked for, and I have been in the safety industry for 18 years. What DISA took away from me is my six-figure income. DISA took away from me insurance for myself and for my family. DISA took away from me my integrity, my reputation. I am 58 years, and in my 58 years, I have never done no drug. I can't even tell what a drug looked like because I have not seen one in my life. I do not smoke even. So I wonder how anybody would have accepted it, would have come back to say a man who in his 58 years have never seen no drug, has never touched no drug. In my over 18 years of being in the refinery industry, I have never failed no test. My last test before the April 9 test was in January. Now, a man who did a hair follicle test and passed it through DISA in January and have done it for over 20 years was purported to have failed a drug test in April. And immediately after I got told by my HR corporate manager that I tested positive for methamphetamine, I left the corporate office, walked straight to DISA facility in Tech City, and submitted myself for a hair follicle test. Now, I called my director, who I work directly under, my safety director, and informed him of the test result. He asked me to add a 9-panel urinalysis test immediately. I did submit myself for both the urinalysis test and for the hair follicle test at DISA's location in Tech City. And you know what? Both came back saying that I'm clean. No methamphetamine, nothing. They are all the same test taken by DISA. Now, while the previous one that I took in Oklahoma 6 days earlier, that I believe DISA messed up. Now, when DISA is the collecting center, when DISA is the man that processes you, when DISA is the man that analyzes, when DISA owns the lab by itself, DISA hides all its failure. DISA simply is out there destroying people because he wants to keep what looked like a stellar record, the infallibility of its test result. But in the real sense, these test results are all flawed. His people mess up day in, day out. and they hide it by destroying innocent people who never touched no drug, who never did no drug, who has nothing to do with drugs.
So the initial drug test that you took for DISA, where they said you tested positive for methamphetamine, you go back less than 48 hours later, and immediately, once you've been informed, you immediately go back to DISA, the same people, and you submit yourself to even more of an extensive drug test, a thoroughly extensive drug test. And DISA, they're the results. Show the results to the people.
I have both the result and the money I paid to DISA. You can look at it.
This is the independent test that he paid for from DISA.
It
The
has
same people that gave him the test before, less than 48 hours earlier, once he had been notified. He came back absolutely clean under a more extensive test he paid for out of his own pocket. And the test that DISA gave him was not as thorough as the one he paid for. But yet DISA still has refused to admit its error, admit its mistake, and make this man whole. And the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, because when you research DISA Global Solutions false drug tests, you will see that in other states there's been successful litigation against them for the same thing they've done to him and hundreds of others. Go ahead, Brother Chiki.
Yeah. All I'm trying to say is there are thousands of people out there who have been humiliated because this is almost like a monopoly in the system. They got the testing, they got the result, they got the medical review officers. So when they bungle up, you know what they do? They cover themselves up.
They circle the wagons.
Yeah, they just cover themselves up because they're only making their money off the back of the people, trying to look like the guy who got perfect arrangement while everything is just all messed up. I'm here to show you this is their result. I got every of their results. They refused to accept the result that they collected, and they did, and they took money from me. And I'm out here, I'm out of job. And I'm out here, I'm suspended for 6 months. 6 months of doing what? What am I going to do in 6 months? I have lost everything. I lost a career that I built 18 years ago. I am at the peak of my career. I'm 58 years. How many more years before retirement? This had destroyed everything I built before this time. They took away everything from me. They took away positions from me. If I have to go back to job, I have to start all over again. If ever I'm going to start all over again. But you can ask yourself, who would want to entrust his workforce in the hands of a safety professional who is supposed to have failed drug tests? Look at it from that angle. It borders on reputation, on integrity, on my humanity. What was trampled upon on the 9th and on the 15th of April was everything about me. I have never smoked in my life. I say it because I'm going public and the whole world know me. Those who went to high school with me are listening to me and will go through this. My family will go through this. I pride myself in the kind of family I come from. That we are Pentecostals. Okay, I am a Pentecostal believer. It's absurd to say somebody like me who is a member of the Assemblies of God Church, failed drug test. Where would I get that drug from? But I'm standing here. This guy is giving me all kind of stories. Now, not only that they didn't want to retest it, they insisted that if they have to retest, it has to be the same sample that got compromised either at the collecting point or at the lab or by their technicians or by way of handling. There are so many human factors in all that DISA do, and you all know that when it involves human beings, you can talk about imperfection. But DISA is out here telling you that their system is so perfect, so accurate, that there is no imperfection in it. I used to believe that. And let me say this publicly. There were a few individuals on my job who had failed drug tests at one point. And they came to me as a safety manager. They said, and they looked at me straight into the face, into the eye, and they said, I didn't do no drug. To be honest, I thought DISA was something to write home about. And I have called every one of them individually to apologize to them. If it didn't happen to me, I wouldn't have known it's real. But I'm saying it out here not because I am involved. And I'm taking this position not because I want money from this, but because there are so many people who've been destroyed. This ought to pay for the destruction of life, for taking food away from people, and for ruining lives.
What do you think is the motive for DISA refusal to admit their mistakes?
Well, I look at it this way. This has no reason other than one thing. His business thrives on what they tag the infallibility of his system. Once DISA begin to admit mistakes, it simply means DISA is like every other consultant that is in the business of testing people. Every day in every other lab or every other labs that does this same business, they acknowledge that there are human factors and human errors that could play out in their testing. But DISA is the only one that never accepted there is any human error.
So DISA holds themselves out as a perfect company.
Exactly. That's what they say. Because when you speak to their MRO doctors or nurse practitioners, whatever they are, when you speak to their personnel, when you speak to their people over the phone, they tell you, our system is so perfect. I had that argument with them over and over. They are so rude, you wouldn't even get them. They'll get you running around. And when you do, when you finally you are able to get in touch with one of them, they will tell you how perfect their system is, how infallible their system is. Therefore, you are the man who failed. You should go and do, the drug and alcohol rehabilitation or whatever they call it, program, SAP, substance abuse program. That's all they have to tell you.
What has this done to your family?
Look at it. I'll say this. I don't want to get very emotional about it. I have a 23-year-old boy. Don't forget that I'm black. And one of the biggest problems when you have a youngster like him is this is one of the earliest things I had to sit my son down to tell him, no matter how young you are, no matter how silly you want to be, you don't experiment on this.
That's right.
It was a no-no. Alcohol, cigarette, drug, and imagine me having to come back home and to call my entire family and to wait until my daughter came back from college. And I had to address them to tell them that I failed a drug test I have never seen before. I stand before Almighty God. Beyond what you call DISA, beyond whatever anybody could say, there is only one creature that stays above human being. It is God Almighty. Whatever anybody thinks about him, he judges us for who we are. You can imagine as I'm telling my son, I lost my job because I failed drug tests. And his first question was like, you failed drug test that you touched drug? The same thing you start hammering onto me ever since I turned 15. Imagine me having to go around finding the words to say this. Imagine me on the job. Everybody know if I have not spoken on drug, the impact of drug, the effect of one impaired employee. I'm not speaking this because I'm a pro-drug type of person. Everybody who knows me on job site, there is hardly any refinery or petrochemical facility in America that I have not touched. because my job, my designation is turnaround, is manager, corporate manager turnarounds. All the major turnarounds that my company been involved, and we are really involved because the company I worked for deals with regional radar, reactors, cyclones, furnaces. I have been in every one of them. So one of the very topics that I discuss in my safety meetings and my toolbox meetings is drug and the effect of drugs. Now, it is part of my responsibility to take people to do this random drug test and to remove them from sight. You can imagine what it looks like.
Right.
The man who, based on the same test that DISA had put on me, had happened to remove, at least I can tell you, I just respect their personality without going to their names. I would have just blown up names.
Let me ask
Who
you
came
this.
back to me to say, I did not do, I have paid this price, but I didn't do this.
Let me ask you this. You're obviously a spiritual man, and you lean on your faith tremendously, and I can admire that. I respect that. My question to you is, what are you willing to do? How far are you willing to go to clear your name?
I will go to court. I will stand in trial. I will do everything because I will say this. He who steals, DISA have stolen money from me, but DISA have stolen more than money from me.
They stole your name.
They stole a name and they stole a reputation from me. Both cannot be compensated, regardless how much money.
Right.
They decide to compensate me with. It can't be the same anymore. I cannot be that guy that will tell you, I never done no drug. I never failed no drug test. This already said I failed in spite of all I said, in spite of all I pushed, in spite of all I tried. So I am willing to go to court. I am willing to stand in testimony anywhere. I'm also willing to submit myself. My daughter and others in my house have been researching on the DISA thing because since ever it happened to me, every one of us have been consumed in this. And I'm trying to look at in a document that says that a test that some of this hair follicle thing, you can push it back further than 3 months.
19 months.
I am willing to stand in test with DISA anywhere in the world for 10 years. Look, I have hairs on my body. These both hands, you can see I got no hair. This is from where they got all the sample. Within the time it happened, I have done 3. I didn't even stop at DISA. I went to another facility to give them to have a second opinion beyond DISA, and I have the test here.
And what people need to know.
Look, this is the result.
What people need to know is that once you take a hair follicle test, it can go back as far as 19 months. If you have used a controlled substance, it can be tested with a hair follicle test that goes back 19 months. DISA is not above the law. DISA, once again, is not above the law, but it is incumbent upon elected officials in Texas, Louisiana, and other states to send the message to the corporate giant DISA. You are not above the law. Elected officials, it is your duty to protect the common working everyday man in America. And they feel that they've been abandoned and betrayed by DISA and those in the courts who are allowing DISA to get away with this. We're waiting on the federal courts right now to come back with a ruling about DISA. And if that ruling comes back in favor of the truth, this is going to turn this entire company upside down. Stay tuned to QX Global News Network and the People's News Network. We will update you and bring you up to speed on the progress of these cases moving through the courts. Brother Cheeky, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your passionate story. And thank you for defending and fighting to regain the good name that God helped you build through your perfect working career in the refinery industry. Thank you, Cheeky. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
for tuning in as you always do. Tag others, let others know about the QX Global News Network, the People's News Network, bringing you stories that most mainstream outlets would never, ever in linear news tell you about. Thank you.